D. Mace Fingan and Donick 1025, 1063 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, Nick Frazier here with you today. Willie Donick and David Janes out. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. How was your weekend, Derek?
The weekend was pretty good, I would say. Went out to dinner, McCall and I, on Saturday. Yeah, Saturday. Went out to dinner, and because it was her birthday weekend, which is her birthday today. Happy birthday. And outside of that, spending a little time with one of my good friends. He came by and we chopped it up for a while, and it was weird because there was I know there were sports on, Adam, Nick. I know there were sports on, but it didn't capture me. It didn't draw me in. I tried to watch a WNBA game. I watched majority of it, but I wanted to watch the Arena League game. Didn't get a chance to watch that. I was listening to some of it because I was in the car. Chase, Big Joe, good job. So I listened to a little bit of it, but it just didn't grab me, man. And should I be upset about that, Adam?
I don't think so.
Because you get so used to, like, even last week, because why game sevens they were on, whether it be the NBA finals or the NHL finals, game 7. So you wanted to see those games. So your weekend had a little pizzazz to it. This week it was just like I found myself watching the movie in the middle of the day on a Sunday. I think it was Sunday and Saturday.
Which movie?
I forgot what it was. Oh my goodness, what was it? Man, it was. I forgot what it was. I ended up watching Intern, which I never seen before. The Intern with De Niro and Anne Hathaway. Oh, that was a great movie. I had never seen it. That was a great. I would recommend that movie 10 out of 10 times. Great movie. Never seen it. Great movie.
That's one word to describe it.
You didn't like it?
I don't remember it. I don't remember it being memorable. Hence the fact that I don't really remember it.
Yeah, I guess
so. It didn't stick with me.
Okay.
But you know what? It's that time of the sports calendar. The major sports, minus baseball, are transitioning to vacation mode. NFL training camp is still about a month away. It's that sleepy time of the sports calendar. But speaking of sleepy time, I didn't get much sleepy time last night because my 3.5-year-old boy, Arlo, he's a big boy. He's 40 plus pounds. He's tall. And when he wakes up in the middle of the night in his bed, he likes to come upstairs to our bed. And who are we to deny him? He wants to snuggle up with his parents. The issue is that when he gets in the bed, he dominates the bed. He sleeps diagonally. He's headbutting me, or he's kicking me or my wife. And last night, it was around 1 o'clock in the morning. He gets up. I go downstairs. I bring him upstairs. He needs to bring his pillow upstairs.
They got to bring everything.
And his water cup upstairs. And I get back in bed. I'm trying to fall back asleep. And he's kicking me. I'm like, all right, guess I'm sleeping in the guest room. So I walk downstairs. I get settled in the guest bed. And before I close my eyes, I just, as we all do, scroll through my phone. And the first thing that pops up, the Nashville Predators making an overnight trade, which has since been made official. The Predators traded Colton Sissons and Jeremy Lauzon to the Vegas Golden Knights for left-handed defenseman Nick Hague and a conditional 3rd-round pick. The condition on that pick is that it becomes a 2nd-round pick if the Vegas Golden Knights win 2 rounds in the 2026 Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, at the time, Derek, when the reporting was coming out that this trade was being made, it was Colton Sissons and Jeremy Lauzon for Nick Hague. And Nick Hague was being signed to a 4-year contract with a $5.5 million cap hit. And when I saw that, I said, this trade doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And now that it's out that the Predators are also getting a conditional third-round pick in the deal because they are retaining half of Colton Sisson's salary, it makes me feel a smidge better. I emphasize that word, smidge better, because realistically, you could see the Predators acquiring a conditional third-round pick that becomes a second-round pick in a trade deadline deal for either Colton Sissons or Jeremy Lauzon, because both of them will be playing on expiring contracts this coming season. But they are no longer here. Nick Hague is in the building. And I've got some questions.
Okay.
So here is a quick scouting report of Nick Hague for those of you who have never heard of Nick Hague. Nick Hague has played 6 seasons in the NHL. He's played 364 NHL games, all with the Vegas Golden Knights. He is, let me double check. He is 26 years old, so he is younger. That's not a bad thing. He is a gargantuan individual. He is one of the biggest defensemen in the NHL. He is 6'6" and 245 pounds. So if this hockey thing doesn't work out, he could probably play power forward in the NBA.
Yes.
But Nick Hague has mostly played a third pairing role for the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, he has seen time with better defensemen for the Vegas Golden Knights, and the Golden Knights have some excellent defensemen. He did play a lot with Alex Pietrangelo, who is one of the Golden Knights' top defensemen. But mostly he played on a third pairing role.
Okay, before you finish that,
sure.
Can I ask you this?
Of course you can ask me anything.
You're going down the measurables and everything else. I do recall, and I did watch the draft too.
And we will get to the draft.
This is the first time I've watched the whole first round of an NHL draft.
And I have thoughts on the presentation of the NHL draft.
Oh my goodness.
As I'm sure you do as well.
Yes, a lot of them. And it ain't good. But didn't I thought I vaguely heard last week, not only you, not only Jared, but Willie talk about getting that guy in that sweet spot. Not a rookie, a guy that you see potential in, a guy that has some seasons up underneath his belt, but still young enough that he fits in to your process, your vision of where you want to go as a team. Win now, but also prepare for the future. Doesn't he kind of sort of fit that mold, which y'all were talking about last week?
I see your point. It is valid. I have been discussing that over the past couple of weeks, that the Predators should find a younger player that they can bring in. I was specifically talking about younger players who needed the change of scenery. I'm not sure Nick Hague qualifies. Here's the issue. That contract is objectively bad. And there is a website known as AFP Analytics. AFP Analytics is a website that specializes in NHL contract projections. So I use that website a lot around this time of year because they do a good job. They have their own analytical model where they're able to project the contracts for free agents in the NHL. And after this trade was reported, this is the tweet from AFP Analytics. It also includes a chart with lots of pretty colors and big numbers and stuff. But here is the tweet from AFP Analytics. Quote, Nick Hague traded to Nashville and signs a 4-year, $5.5 million per season contract. Good on him and his agent. Stop. When that's the first thing that's said, you know it's going to get bad. We can oftentimes come up with comps to justify a deal, even if we don't agree with them. We couldn't here. Acquisition cost plus contract is really questionable for the team. In a vacuum, the Nick Hague contract is objectively a bad contract. You do not pay a third pairing defenseman $5.5 million per season. I believe his previous cap hit was 2 point something. He received a, I guess, what would it, is my math right here? A 200% raise, a 100% raise. I'm not good with percentages. He doubled his. And
so how many years he have left on that contract again?
His contract, his previous contract was expiring.
Okay.
So this is a new contract that starts this coming season. You do not pay third pairing defenseman $5.5 million per season. Full stop. It is not an adequate use of resources. Now, I know he's big, and you can't teach size.
Where do they sit as far as the salary cap, the Nashville
Let me
Predators?
double check.
Because maybe like, and Willie has said this.
They have roughly $12 million of cap space. So they're not hurting for cap space.
But over the length of the contract, will it turn out to be not such a bad contract?
Now, Willie, who isn't here, would argue that the salary cap is going up. Yes. So $5.5 million isn't a huge deal, perhaps as it might have been a few years ago. But it's just, I don't see this being great value. Again, I feel better about the trade this morning than I did last night when I was struggling to fall back asleep because my son was giving me roundhouse kicks to the back as he was trying to settle in last night.
Well, be lucky you don't have two, because I experienced that double time, okay?
Yes, okay. Michael in Madison says a 100% raise would be doubling his salary. 200% would triple it. So it was a 100% raise, basically. More than a 100% raise. Thank you, Michael in Madison. Again, math is not my strong suit. But clearly the Predators see value in Nick Hague. I would describe Nick Hague in one sentence as a bigger, slightly better version of Lauzon. Slightly better. It may be a wash, but it just, this is the second trade that the Predators have made over the past couple of weeks where I'm scratching my head going, does Barry Trotz understand the values of certain players? We talked about this with Eric Haula a couple of weeks ago. I told you, Derek, that my issue with that trade is that Barry Trotz gave up a 4th-round pick to acquire Eric Haula when it should have been the other way around. The Devils should have given the Predators an asset to take Eric Haula off their hands. And look, Jeremy Lauzon was injured for most of last season. Jeremy Lauzon's sort of grow on trees. Colton Sissons, I do want to take a moment to say goodbye to Colton Sissons because few players have played as many games for this organization as Colton Sissons. Can you believe, Derek, that Colton Sissons played nearly 700 games for the Nashville Predators? 7th all time in franchise history. He played parts of 11 seasons with the Nashville Predators. I believe he made his NHL debut when Barry Trotz was still coaching the Predators.
Wow. I didn't realize that.
So he would have played for Trotz as a coach, Laviolette, Hines, and Brunette. So, we bid farewell to Colton Sissons. One could argue the greatest single game performance in Predators history. His hat trick in Game 6 of the 2017 Western Conference Final as the Predators punched their ticket to the Stanley Cup Final. And just a great guy. Someone I always had time for. So, Predators, yes, thank you. I have a soft spot in my heart, Nick Frazier, for Sarah McLachlan. So long, Colton Sissons. We will remember you. Hashtag Sissons scored. I do want to take a moment to say goodbye to Colton Sissons. A great guy, a good, solid player for this team for a very long time. But I just think that I'm wondering if Barry Trotz, and Jared even texted me mentioning the Luke Schenn trade too. Because remember, Luke Schenn was traded from the Predators to the Penguins. And then I believe it would have been, Novak and Schenn for Bunting in a 4th, I want to say. And then the Penguins got a 2nd-round pick by trading Schenn to the Jets. So we'll see how that trade works out. But I do wonder at times if Barry Trotz truly grasps how players are valued around the league. This move, this Nick Hague move, and the Brady Martin draft pick as well, which we'll talk about. This trade overshadows the Predators' number 5 overall pick, I should say. But it does feel, and I'm cribbing this from Jared. It does feel that Barry Trotz is GMing like Barry Trotz, the coach, that he's valuing things that he valued as a coach, which maybe GM should not value as much. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but if you're working in unison with your head coach, and listen, this may end up being a problem regardless, because and you guys are right when you talk about Barry possibly, GMing like a head coach. But in reality, wouldn't you want both of those individuals to be on the same page, looking in the same direction? But here is the problem, I think, or it can't end up being the problem. Are you building this team, or are you allowing Coach Bruno to build this team? Are you building the team you want and you would coach, or are you building a team based on, Coach Bruno's coaching style and what he wants from this team? That's the question, especially in a situation like this. Are you building it for the head coach that you have, or are you building it for the head coach you used to be? And maybe that, I'm not going to say that brand of hockey doesn't work, because you see what Florida did, but Florida, they're a hell of a scoring team too. They play offense just as well as they play defense.
One texter says, Trotz no longer gets the benefit of the doubt. Moves are not making sense, so there is no faith in whatever the hell he is doing. Draft picks, contracts, or buying at the right time or selling at the right time. And Derek, I made this point. Jason, Big Joe were kind enough to have me on a little bit early today to talk about everything that's been going on with the Predators over the past several days. And we've talked about this on our program as well, that when the Predators announced that Barry Trotz was returning as GM, as the successor to David Poile, Predators fans, I think, by and large, were thrilled. Predators fans love Barry Trotz.
Oh, absolutely.
I remember, I believe it was Jeff Marek, who's a popular hockey podcaster, worked with Elliot Freeman at Sportsnet. Now he does his own thing. I believe Jeff Marek said at one point, if you don't like Barry Trotz, there's something wrong with you, not with Barry Trotz. And I agree with that. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Barry Trotz. I have always enjoyed talking to Barry Trotz. And because of that, he came in with a bit of a force field that if things went awry, he made a bad move, he wasn't going to be vilified immediately because he's Barry Trotz. But over the past year, with how poorly the team played this past season, how those high-priced free agent acquisitions played this past season, the UC Saros contract, which at the moment doesn't look very good, although it hasn't even officially started, and therein lies the problem. I think that force field is gone. And I am curious. We did this exercise last week, rating 1 to 5. Trotz as a GM and his ability to get the Predators back to Stanley Cup contender status. I think Barry Trotz within the fan base is in an interesting spot because, again, that force field is gone. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt because he's Barry Trotz. That's gone. And I'm curious how he proceeds from here and how Predators fans feel how he's been doing.
You don't want this fan base, because I don't think they will ever completely turn on Barry. I think they will want him to go or want him to make some changes, but I don't think they will, because Barry, to them, it's just like any, anybody. If your career was, sort of looked at as, either your playing career or your coaching career before you transition to a higher level. If your coaching career or your playing career is seen to be great, and people just see nothing but good things, and when they think of the franchise, they think of you. When you do that, when you transition, there's always this bumper. There's always, I don't know how long it lasts, but there's that bumper. But even as it starts to get closer and it starts to wear thin, I think people will always treat Barry with grace. And they will always, remember what he did, but say, hey, listen, he has to make changes. I don't think they will go full blown, scorched earth on him. But I think he has to understand that this fan base loves him. And I don't think you want to get to a point where the fan base is now saying, man, maybe Barry needs to whatever it is, because they see what he's doing hasn't worked or doesn't make sense to them.
615-737-1025. We already have a lot of reaction on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. You can also call us as well at 615-737-1025. The Predators make a trade. Broke overnight, finalized this morning. So long to Colton Sissons and Jeremy Lauzon. They're off to Las Vegas for left-handed defenseman Nick Hague, who signs a 4-year contract with a $5.5 million cap hit. The Predators also receive a conditional third-round pick, which becomes a second-round pick if Vegas wins 2 rounds in the 2026 Stanley Cup playoffs. The Predators also retain 50% of Colton Sissons' salary, roughly $1.4 million. 615-737-1025. We will take your reaction. We will eventually get to the perhaps bigger news of the week. The Predators drafting Brady Martin with the 5th overall pick on Friday in the NHL draft. But first, we will take your reaction to the Predators trade this morning, broke last night. 615-737-1025. This week's Nashville's best deal is Tzatziki's. Craving something fresh and flavorful? Tzatziki's has you covered, from juicy chicken kebabs to perfectly grilled salmon. Every bite is bursting with Mediterranean goodness, and don't even get us started on the homemade sauces and dressing. Get half off a $25 gift card now while supplies last at theGameNashville.com/deals. D. Mace, Finken, and Donick, 1025, 1063. The game. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, Nick Frazier. Viva Las Vegas indeed for Colton Sissons and Jeremy Lozon. They are off to Sin City in a trade with the Vegas Golden Knights. The Predators acquired left-handed defenseman Nick Hague, 6'6", 245-pound left-hand defenseman Nick Hague, and a conditional third-round pick. It becomes a second-round pick if Vegas wins 2 rounds in the playoffs next season. The Predators also retain 50% of Sissons' salary. We have a lot of reaction on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com at 615-737-1025. So let's run through these. Brandy on our text line says, Trotzy is making it hard for me to keep defending him with these choices. One texter says, Trotz has said they're open to Yossi playing on the right side. Between that and Hague getting $5.5 million per season, wouldn't that suggest Hague is playing on the left next to Yossi? It's an interesting point. I'll be curious to see what the Predators do there because they have too many left-handed defensemen. Way too many left-handed defensemen. When your best right-handed defenseman is Justin Barron, you've got problems. So it'll be interesting to see what the Predators do there. Hague has shown an ability to play with top defensemen. Again, although he is mostly, or was mostly, a third-pairing defenseman for the Golden Knights, he did see time with Alex Pietrangelo, in Vegas this past season. So he's capable of doing it. I don't know if he's capable of doing it over a full season.
Do you think it would be better for which pairing do you think that he would get the most? You would get the most out of him with Yossi or Brady Shea?
Well, Brady Shea is also left-handed.
Yeah. So he's left-handed. So that counts it out.
Right. So it depends on what the Predators do in free agency tomorrow. Oh, by the way, NHL free agency starts tomorrow, right when our show starts at 11 o'clock. So if the Predators sign a right-handed defenseman, if your left side is Yossi, Shea, and Hague, I guess that's not terrible. It's not terrible.
No.
But again, $5.5 million
per
season for a third pairing defenseman.
Okay. What would I know he would have to play what you want from if he plays excellent. Everybody wants that. But what would be justifiable?
It's a good question. It's a good question because Nick Hague is not a player who is judged on points.
Exactly.
He is not an offensive defenseman in the slightest. He has played 364 career games. He has 83 career points, 20 goals, 63 assists. He has never scored more than 5 goals in a season in his NHL career. So you're not grading him on that. So a lot of it depends on how well he defends and how well the Predators do when he's on the ice.
And isn't that what the Nashville Predators
they need to defend better? Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
No doubt about it. They need to defend better. But again, my problem isn't with the acquisition of Nick Hague. Like the player, it's the player himself. I don't have an issue with Hague. I think he can be valuable. I think that the Predators, by making this deal and signing him to that contract, are overvaluing the contributions that Nick Hague can make. And sometimes teams pay more for that kind of stuff. The Predators absolutely overpaid Luke Schenn in free agency for intangibles because he's a good leader and he's physical, all of those things. They overpaid him for that. So,
okay, here's another question for you, because some would say, and I like to try to tie both sports in somehow, some way. I try to find a tentacle that reaches across both sports, which I'm talking about football and hockey. When you are not a good team, and we said this and we continue to say this about the Tennessee Titans, when you're trying to get certain players, more so marquee players, there's a tax you got to pay. The not so good tax. When you're not a good team, you got to pay a little bit extra more, a little bit extra for that individual. Maybe the Nashville Predators are in that position, that they may have to pay a little bit more for an individual because they're trying to become that good team. There's no, if they are the Florida Panthers if they've done what the Florida Panthers have did so far, players are wanting to come to play for Nashville, right? Because they're winning. When you're not winning, what is the advantage outside of no state income tax? Nashville is a great place to live because they haven't shown within the last 2 seasons that they are headed toward being a consistent winning team.
I think that makes more sense in free agency.
Yes.
In this situation,
It's
he
a
was
trade.
traded,
Yeah.
and I believe Hague was a
But he had to have agreed to the contract in order for the trade to happen, right?
I imagine it was done in tandem.
Uh-huh.
I believe he was a pending restricted free agent, so he had limited control over the situation.
Okay.
But I absolutely hear what you're saying. Jared and I argued about this a bit during the Stanley Cup playoffs with the state income tax thing, because I do think that is an advantage. I don't think it's as big of an advantage as some people make it out to be. And when the Florida Panthers were terrible, free agents weren't beating down their door to play for Florida so that they could take home more pay because the team was bad.
Yeah.
It only really is an advantage when you're good. Let's continue your reaction. Brad says the third pairing defenseman from Vegas will be a second pair defenseman for the Predators. That justifies the contract for the new defenseman. The Preds have several good defensemen in Milwaukee, so I'm not sure why this move was necessary, but I get it. Jeff says all valid points for and against. Don't look now, but aside from McCarron, Smith, Yossi, Forsberg, and Saros, the full rebuild has been completed, albeit in the most unorthodox manner. Polarizing for sure, but scorched earth is exactly the way I would characterize Trotz's decisions. Paul says the fan base is already going scorched earth on Barry Trotz after this crazy contract for a third-line D-man and passing on a projected 1C to draft a projected 3C, meaning Brady Martin, and we'll get there. When this franchise is apparently allergic to top-line centers. Feels like the bag was fumbled when they haven't picked that high in 20 years. And it feels like every pro sports GM in Nashville has to swim against the tide and be the smartest guy in the draft room, resulting in a lot of first-round disappointment. Now, look, we will get to the draft. And by the way, in hindsight, and I emphasize this part, in hindsight, the Predators' decision to waive Dante Fabro does not look like a great decision. Now, I don't remember being all bent out of shape when the Predators waived Dante Fabro. I don't think I was up in arms about it. I thought it was a curious decision to just basically give Dante Fabro away. And Dante Fabro re-signed with the Columbus Blue Jackets over the weekend. He signed a 4-year deal. His cap hit is just north of $4 million per season. And guess what? He's a right-handed defenseman. Sounds good for what the Predators need right now. It appears they fumbled the bag or the ball with Dante Fabro. Again, that's in hindsight because I don't remember being outraged about it at the time. But it goes back to what I was talking about earlier with the feel-good story of Barry Trotz returning to Nashville as GM. I think that part of the story is over. I think after the first season with the point streak and the surprise trip to the playoffs, Barry Trotz was riding high. And he made some good moves that first year. They seemed to work by trading Ryan Johansson, signing Ryan O'Reilly and Gus Nyquist. Those moves seemed to work. Then it seemed that everything else that could go, everything that could go wrong for the Predators last season did. So it feels like Barry Trotz again, that so-called force field that he had that could protect him from criticism when he came back because he's Barry Trotz. I think that's gone. So the fan base right now between this trade, the selection of Brady Martin with the 5th overall pick on Friday, the way last season went, it hasn't been a great year for Barry Trotz. So I'm curious about how he goes about free agency. They still do have cap room. But as I said on Chase and Big Joe, Derek, before we go to break, one thing I said on Chase and Big Joe is this team's ceiling, as of right now, and things will change rapidly over the next 24 hours or so, this team right now, the 2025-2026 Nashville Predators, their absolute ceiling is what the I guess that would have been the 2021, 2022 Predators which was they sneak into the playoffs and then they run up against a Dallas or a Vegas or an Edmonton and just get their doors blown off. Like that's what the absolute ceiling for this Predators team on paper right now is, sneaking into the 8th spot and getting walloped.
Mollywop, basically.
So
I do want to ask you a question,
sure,
but you can answer it.
Why
on
don't
the
you
other
tease
side.
it and then
Yes.
I'll answer it.
You can answer it on the other side. It goes to one of our texters' question, not a question, a statement. He said he believed that Barry has already started to transition of rebuild. He said basically he threw scorched earth in there as well, as well as the next texter, but he said Barry has gone scorched earth. My question is, do you think that's the case?
Do you truly believe that?
Yeah,
Barry
I'm asking
Trotz
you based upon that question.
Is he playing 4D chess while the rest of us are playing checkers?
Absolutely.
615-737-1025. I'm a fan of Chinese checkers myself. 615-737-1025. We're just Chinese. You know, the saying is he's playing chess while we're playing checkers. Is Chinese checkers more advanced than regular checkers? What do you think, Fraser?
I'd say so.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I like Chinese checkers. 615-737-1025. You can answer Derek's question. I will as well. And there is one thing about all of the moves that they've made that I do want to get to about the immediate future of the franchise. 615-737-1025. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game. This September, Tim McGraw will be performing at, is it Trying Tix's Rock the Cradle in Nashville, a meaningful event supporting newborns and moms at Ascension St. Thomas Midtown. Get your tickets now at rockthecradlenashville.org. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan. So, Derek, we had a texter. It was Jeff. Jeff said all valid points for and against the trade of Nick Hague. Don't look now, but aside from McCarron, Smith, Yossi, Forsberg, and Saros, the full rebuild has been completed, albeit in the most unorthodox manner. Polarizing for sure, but scorched earth is exactly the way I would characterize Trotz's decision. So for kicks and giggles, and as inspired by friend of the show, Jacob Underwood, who works with Willie on the Predators broadcasts, I have pulled up the Predators opening night lineup from a year ago. So the 18 skaters and 2 goalies that they had on the ice for game 1 of the regular season last October against the Dallas Stars. The following players are no longer members of the team: Gus Nyquist, Tommy Novak, Philip Tomasino, Colton Sissons, Mark Jankowski, Dante Fabro, Jeremy Lauzon, Alexander Carrier, Luke Shen, and Scott Wedgwood. 10 players who dressed for the Predators on opening night last season, 10 of 18, are no longer members of this organization.
So does that mean they are in a rebuild? Because
if you listen to Barry Trotz last week during his news conference and his interview with Jared Stillman,
he's not.
Doesn't sound like he's rebuilding.
But when you start the next following season with 10 new faces on your opening day roster, that has to signal to people in the locker room that there's something different going on. Like we're no way near the same team we were when you just talk about individuals on opening day. We're nowhere near the same team we were last year. And as much as, you look at it as a player and you're not intending to think rebuild, it would sort of look like that process has begun in a major way. But you still have, guys on the roster that are older individuals: Marshall Shaw, Brady Shin, Roman Yossi, Forsberg, Saros, guys that have been here. And not necessarily Brady Shin, those guys, but those are older individuals. But you still sort of have a top-heavy older team.
This is what I would love to know, and maybe I'll do this research at some point. The top 6 point scorers for the Predators last season are all in their 30s.
Yes.
Forsberg, Marchessault, Stamkos, O'Reilly, Yossi, and Shea.
And all those guys are still there.
And I wonder where that ranks league-wide. The youngest, highest leading point scorer, I guess you could say, last season was Luke Evangelista. He had 32 points in 68 games. In terms of rookies, I think they had 8 rookie skaters play last season. Let me confirm that. Yes, they had 8 rookie skaters appear in at least one game last season. The leading scorer among those rookies was Fedor Svechkov, who had 17 points in 52 games. And Chuck, on our text line, disagrees with me on my assessment that this team's ceiling is sneak into the playoffs as a wild card team and get stomped in the first round.
He thinks it's
He says on paper, we are better than just make playoffs and get busted first round. I think the whole league, for the most part, agreed with that assessment at the beginning of last year. You still have your core. It's a retool. Well, here are some questions I have about that. Who's playing second line center for the Nashville Predators? Because Barry Trotz told Jared last week that he doesn't want Steven Stamkos playing center anymore, right? Steven Stamkos played a lot of center last season. The Predators did not acquire Steven Stamkos to play center last season, but out of necessity, he had to play center last season. So let's say he's back on the wing. Well, Colton Sissons is gone. Are you going to trust Eric Haula to play second line center? No, thank you. It might be Fedor Svechkov by default. And having Fedor Svechkov, who again had 17 points last season in 50-plus games, centering Steven Stamkos, I don't think that's going to help Steven Stamkos score more goals. So, again, a lot can change. Free agency is tomorrow. We'll see what the Predators do in free agency. So things can change. But I just see a team for next season that, best case scenario, makes the playoffs near the end of the season and lasts maybe a week and a half in the playoffs. But here's the other thing too. When you look at their salary cap situation past this coming season, keep in mind that the Predators are paying roughly $6 million, actually more than $6 million, roughly $6.5 million this season to Matt Duchene for buying him out. That drops by $5 million to $1.5 million in 2026, 2027. So that's a big ticket item, dead money off the books. The Predators have a lot of unrestricted free agents after this season, like Michael Bunting, Eric Haula, Cole Smith, Michael McCarron, Andreas Englund, Jordan Osterley, Nick Blankenberg. They have a lot of players coming off the ledger. Your confidence level in Barry Trotz largely depends on how confident you are that those spots that are coming open will be adequately filled by all of the young players we've talked so much about, like Tanner Molendyk, Matthew Wood, Joakim Kimmel. You hope for steps up from Zachary LaRue and Fedor Svechkov, Brady Martin. Like, it depends on how confident you are in those young players. And the one knock against the Predators' prospect pool, when you read the experts, like friend of the show, Scott Wheeler, is that the Predators have a lot of depth in their pool. It's a deep pool of quality prospects, but they're missing that top of the line, can't miss hot shot prospect. Maybe it's Brady Martin. The reaction from Predators fans this past weekend would suggest that it's not Brady Martin. And we'll get into that in the next hour. But it largely depends, Derek, on how you feel about the future of the organization, because the roster as is, with the older players, Ryan O'Reilly is 34 years old. Steven Stamkos is 35 years old. Jonathan Marchessault is 34 years old. Roman Josi is 35 years old with a head condition. Brady Shea is 31 years old. Philip Forsberg, I believe, is either 30 or 31 years old. UC Saros is 30 years old. Like, rebuilding teams are not full of 30-year-olds signed to long-term contracts. That's just not how it works.
No, it doesn't. Amongst because you named out, you named what, 7 players,
something like that
were unrestricted free agents after this season. Of those 7 players, which players do you think more than likely will be back with the Nashville Predators? Because then that determines too.
If I had to guess right now.
Yeah, if you had to guess right now, based on what they've done.
I'm not sure you see Michael Bunting back after this season. He is a valuable trade deadline piece, I think. I don't think you see Eric Haula back. Haula back, that's funny.
Haula back.
Yes. I don't think you see Michael McCarron back. I could see them re-signing Cole Smith, but that's not going to cost that much. Okay. These free agent defensemen, Osterley, Englund, Blankenberg, they're a dime a dozen. So
if not this season, which we've seen, it will be minus 10 players from the previous opening day roster. The next following season, it's going to be even more.
There is going to be a lot of turnover
the next couple of seasons.
Now, the question again is, how confident are you that the Predators have drafted the right players who can take those spots? Fedor Svechkov and Matthew Wood and Tanner Molendyk, et cetera, et cetera. How confident are you? And that will largely determine how you feel about the direction of the Predators. Because Barry Trotz told you by telling Jared that he wants to be competitive this season. I just don't think that the 2025-2026 Predators have what it takes to be a true threat to the upper class of the Western Conference in the NHL. I do not see a roster on paper that can be legitimately competitive. And that wouldn't matter to me as much if Barry Trotz didn't say it mattered to him. And that's how Jared changed his tune, right? Jared was looking ahead. He was looking to 2028. Then he talked to Barry Trotz, And now he's judging Barry Trotz on this coming season. So welcome to Nashville, Nick Hague. You've already got a lot to prove, man, because Predators fans, they're not loving this deal. And again, on paper, Nick Hague, gargantuan individual, 6'6", 245 pounds, won the Stanley Cup with Vegas, ex-teammates with Jonathan Marchessault, and maybe even Eric Haula, depending on when Haula was with the Vegas Golden Knights. But again, let me read to you. Let me go back and read to you that tweet from AFP Analytics. Again, a website that specializes in NHL contract projections. This is their whole deal. This is what they are paid to do. Nick Hague traded to Nashville and signs a 4-year, $5.5 million per season contract. Good on him and his agent. We can oftentimes come up with comps to justify a deal, even if we don't agree with them. We couldn't here. Acquisition cost plus contract is really questionable for the team. Really questionable. So
when they say acquisition cost, are they saying
now, to be
what
fair,
they had to?
That was tweeted before the full details came out.
Okay,
but that was when we thought it was Sissons and Lauzon for Hague without the draft pick.
But now the draft pick is a conditional, right?
Yes,
it's a conditional draft pick. What do you make of them having to take on some of the salary,
even
though, albeit it's only what $1 million,
right? So
roughly,
quickly. Every team is allowed to retain salary on, if I'm not mistaken, 3 contracts per season. So the Predators this coming season are retaining salary on 2 players, Colton Sissons and Matthias Ekholm, with his deal with the Oilers. So they have 1 retention spot, and retention spots are valuable. I believe it's being legislated out of the CBA, the new CBA, which takes effect in a couple of years. But you see a lot recently, these sort of third-party brokers where it's a 3-team deal and one team's whole purpose is we're going to take some of that contract of that high-priced player that you're trying to get from point A to point B. We'll take him for a second, not like a second-round pick.
Yes.
We'll take him for a second in time.
Yes,
and give him to the team you're actually trying to send him to by retaining some of his salary, and you give us an asset for our trouble. Okay. I don't think teams are going to be able to do that anymore in a couple of years, but that's valuable, especially for a team that may not be very good.
Yes, because it allows you to facilitate the trade a lot better, just in case that person doesn't have the cash or room per salary cap to do it. You can circumvent it another way.
Quickly, before we change the subject, I want to get back to Chuck's text. And Chuck was the one who disagreed with my assessment on the rebuild. He goes, how much of a threat were the 2017 Predators? It's a longer text, but stop. Now that Colton Sissons has been traded, we probably should have moved on from 2017 a long time ago. Now that Colton Sissons has been traded, the player who almost single-handedly got you into the Stanley Cup final 8 years ago, I think we need to close the book on, well, in 2017, this happened. Chuck, I appreciate you, and you're a devoted listener. I can't even get through this whole text. 615-737-1025. Okay, something else happened over the weekend that was overshadowed by the trade last night and this morning. The NHL draft. The Predators draft Brady Martin with the 5th overall pick. Did the Predators play it safe by drafting Brady Martin? We will discuss that coming up next. 615-737-1025. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game. D. Mace Finnegan and Donick 1025, 1063 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, Nick Frazier here with you. Willie Donick and David James are out today. We spent the first hour talking about the Predators' acquisition of Nick Hague, left-handed defenseman from the Vegas Golden Knights, for Colton Sissons and Jeremy Lauzon. Also, the Predators acquire a conditional third-round pick. But that trade last night, it was broken last night, made official this morning, overshadowed what the Predators did on Friday evening when they selected Brady Martin at number 5 overall. The Predators' third ever top 5 NHL draft pick, and they select Brady Martin. And Derek, we spent a lot of time over the past couple of weeks talking about two players in particular, Porter Martone and James Higgins. And the Predators opted not to draft either of those players. They went with Brady Martin. By the way, Martone and Higgins went 6 and 7 right after Martin went at 5. So this is the question I have for all of you and for Derek at 615-737-1025. Did the Predators play it safe by picking Brady Martin? And Derek, I do have a somewhat personal question for you. Don't be pressured to answer it.
Yes.
What's your type?
You mean like relationship-wise?
Yeah.
Oh.
What's your type?
I mean, I don't.
What do you look for in a lady, Derek Mason?
Other than intelligence, outside of intelligence, you have some intelligence in you or within you.
Mm-hmm.
Smart, conversationalist. She has to be a nice-looking woman. And there are a lot of other things, but those are a few. Is that good enough?
That works for me.
Emily, what you say about that? I mean, would you, if a guy said that's what he was looking for, what would you say? Or did you not hear me? I said smart, intelligent,
I do have I do have a reason for asking this question, by the way.
Stuff like that. That's cool. Yeah, she gave me the thumbs up. That's cool. Yeah, fine. There you go.
The Predators.
So that's my type.
The Predators absolutely have a type.
Okay.
Gritty, physical, hardworking. Any other synonym? I almost said cinnamon. Any other synonym?
That's good too.
Cinnamon is good
Cinnamon
too.
is delicious. Any other synonym that you have for those words? That's the Predators type. And they went for their type in Brady Martin. Brady Martin had 72 points, 33 goals, 39 assists, and 57 games for the Sioux Greyhounds of the Ontario Hockey League this past season.
Mm-hmm.
And man, oh man, talk about a Predator-style player. Brady Martin did not attend the NHL draft because he was on his family farm in Ontario. And our friend of the show, Elliot Freeman, had a breakdown on Sportsnet's coverage of the NHL draft of Brady Martin's schedule on the farm.
There is a player tonight, Brady Martin, who plays for the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, and he is a very highly regarded player. Sam, in his most recent rankings, had him 7th. Jason predicted he'd go 6th in the draft. This is Elmira, Ontario. It's about 2 hours northwest of Toronto, and this is where Brady Martin is tonight with his family on the family farm, and he is busy. One of the things he talked about was if everybody couldn't come, he'd rather stay home and work. He's up early, 6 a.m., and there's not much time to waste after he gets out of bed. First thing up on the schedule, the farm chores for a couple of hours. Then after that's done, you move on to taking care of the cows. That's a 90-minute job approximately. Then after a bit of a break, you've got to do your hockey training to be ready to go in the top 10 potentially tonight. That's about 3.5 hours, the skating and the training. Then it's back to the chores. First of all, in the dairy barn, that takes about 2.5 hours. And now tonight, he's able to sit, relax with his family in front of the screen, and be ready.
Can't you see the Predators going, he's up at 6 o'clock. He's milking those cows. That's my kind of guy. Like, I'm being somewhat facetious, but I did think it was funny that the player the Predators drafted was not at the draft because he was on the family farm. But one thing to make abundantly clear about this particular draft pick, and I've seen some of this reaction over the past few days, Derek, this was not a reach. This is not the Predators equivalent of taking a guard with the 11th overall pick. ESPN, in its final mock draft, had Brady Martin going 4th overall. Corey Pronman of The Athletic had Brady Martin going 5th overall in his final mock draft of the Predators. Scott Wheeler, also of The Athletic, had Martin going 6th. So this was not a reach. The Predators did not take a player who was projected to go 15th or 16th and take him with the 5th overall pick. So if you say it's a reach, that is inaccurate. It was not a reach. However, I was hoping, Derek, that the Predators would go against type with this pick. There were 2 players on the board, 2 players we talked a lot about, Porter Martone and James Hagens, who have higher ceilings in terms of overall skill. Rachel Dory, who writes for ESPN and has worked in front offices around the NHL, she wrote this in grading the Predators draft. Quote, I understand betting on Brady Martin and why so many teams liked him, but Nashville is starved for elite talent and left James Hagens and Porter Martone on the board. If Martin hits, he's a valuable playoff player, but there are not many scenarios where he's more valuable than Hagens or Martone. So again, the Predators picked the most Predator-like player available at the top of the draft in Brady Martin. I'm wondering if they left too much skill on the table.
I mean, there's a possibility, but we won't know for some years unless these, one of these 3 or one of the 2 that, Nashville Predators fans wanted them to draft ends up popping immediately. Outside of that, we're not going to know whether the Nashville Predators made the wise move by taking Brady Martin or, creating more space, more room from, space between them and the playoffs, So I think there is, because in building the team, I understand that they've been looking for this centerman. And I know what they haven't gotten in many years, and I know the players they have, and the organization, what they're trying to build. They're, sort of the foundation of this team. If a guy fits into, what your team is about, why not take him? I understand he may not have the skill of Hagen or Martone. I get that. But if he fits what you are trying to do as a organization, then isn't that what you want? Because we always, and again, these players may turn out to be great players, but when you draft somebody, you're drafting them to see how well you project them fitting into how you see your team moving forward. This is how Barry sees his team moving forward. He doesn't see those other 2 guys, albeit they may turn out to be great players, wonderful players, good to wonderful, great players. But what Barry's looking at, they don't quite fit in all around. I hate to use the word that we have banned, but I got to use it sort of in this
I'll allow
situation.
It this one time.
All right, this one time, and then no more. He sort of checked that box or those boxes that Barry Trotz and Coach Bruno are looking for in regards to how they're building their team. Maybe he checks more boxes all around. Those guys may be better on the high end, but he's not too far away from a skill standpoint, but he fits better with what they want to do moving forward from a physicality standpoint and everything else. So maybe it was that. And I get it, because I thought they were going to draft the kid Hagens. I picked him Friday.
You did.
Yeah. I don't think anyone did.
Nobody in our group picked Brady Martin.
Yeah. So, I mean, I get who based upon what we were thinking leading up to the draft, and, they needed, someone that could be creative with the puck, someone that could put it in the back of the net with ease, someone that can get up and down the rink very quickly. I understand that. But maybe Brady Martin fits more what they want to do or how they envision their team moving forward.
One texter says, Derek, great point about fit. Only wish Trotz did that when he signed Stamkos, Marchessault, and Brady Shea.
Yeah.
But
he was trying to force that one, I think.
I agree with you. I think that is a valid argument about the valid argument that you're making. It's not one texter says it's not a big deal if you're making a character pick. Wouldn't you want the guy who lives and breathes hockey instead of milking cows? Well, I do think he does live and breathe hockey. He just works on his family farm. I don't think he's
dedication.
One texter said, if I'm trying to find it, one text, it may have been the same texter actually. He says, well, darn, I hope he retires from milking cows or whatever and goes full-time hockey. I think he will. And then when he's retired, he's going back to the farm.
Exactly.
So he's got that farm strength.
But wouldn't you want, we kid about that, but wouldn't you want someone that works hard like that?
Well, here's the thing. I get what the texter is saying.
Mm-hmm.
Let me read that text again. It's not a big deal, but if you're making a character pick, wouldn't you want the guy who lives and breathes hockey instead of milking cows? I always have this issue, Derek, especially, I feel like it's most prevalent in the NFL draft, where it's like, this guy's not all about ball because he has a hobby outside of football. I like players who don't just live and eat and sleep and breathe the game that they play. I don't know if that's healthy. I like a player to have a creative outlet outside of the sport they play. So if Brady Martin in the offseason, he's working at the family farm, milking the cows and doing training on the farm, I've got no problem with that. I'm not knocking Brady Martin because he works on his family's farm.
So what you, again, I don't get it either. I really don't get it when the NFL people say that. Oh, he's all about ball. So what? He's supposed to just go to work and go home and go to sleep. He can't interact with his family. He can't let off some steam every once in a while with his friends, something within boundaries. But that person or that female or male, they're not capable of doing that. That's what you're saying. I don't understand that. I think it's a word that people throw around too much. And it's almost like if that person doesn't fall into that category, it's like he's deemed not being worthy of signing as a free agent or not being worthy of drafting just because this kid works on it. Actually, I would rather take that kid because I know he's all about hard work.
Yeah, I don't want the players on my favorite teams to be automatons, robots.
Yeah,
I don't want that. And by the way, I wasn't bringing that up to make fun of Brady Martin. I thought that Elliott had some great detail there on his schedule and the fact that he didn't show up to the draft because he wanted to be on his family farm.
I like that.
And I think this is part of it, Derek. So one player who I believe Martin has said himself he models his game after is Sam Bennett. And if you watched the Stanley Cup playoffs these past 2 seasons, especially this past season, you know who Sam Bennett is. Sam Bennett won the Conn Smythe Trophy for the Florida Panthers, scored 15 goals in 23 playoff games, set the NHL record for most road goals in a single postseason. And the guy is nasty. And he is the epitome of a player who you hate when you're playing against him, but love him when he's on your team. And by the way, Bennett just signed an 8-year contract with an $8 million cap hit. So he got paid and he's remaining in Florida. So I'm sure Predators fans would love to have a Sam Bennett type on their team. By the way, Sam Bennett was the 4th overall pick in his draft. Brady Martin, the 5th overall pick in his draft. But here's a trivia question for you, Derek. What do you think Sam Bennett's career high in regular season points is?
I don't know.
51.
I was going to say 40-something.
51 this past season. He had 25 goals and 26 assists. So an incredibly valuable playoff player. But 51 points for the 4th overall pick in his draft year. Like, Predators fans, I think, are hoping for more. I think that's what the issue was at the time, was that the Predators had an opportunity, again, to go against type. They had the opportunity to pick a highly skilled player like James Hagens, a power forward like Porter Martone, who looks like he has what it takes to be a solid goal scorer in the NHL. Predators fans wanted the Predators to go against type. And by picking Brady Martin, it feels that they played it safe. I do think you made a good point about fit, because Brady Martin absolutely fits what the Predators want to do. The question is Brady Martin the type of player who you can count on 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road and beyond to be that ultimate difference maker?
Yeah, here's the one thing that because I think this was described about Brady Martin's, from several individuals, but a part of his scouting profile, and you didn't hear this about Hagens or Martone, at least when I was reading, I didn't see it, is that Martin finds ways to get involved physically if he doesn't have his A game offensively. And it says right after that, and executives loves that. Why? Because every night you're not going to be that person offensively. And hell, that's what they've dealt with this past season, when all guys that we look toward to be offensive drivers for us, they were not. But then when they were not, they wasn't giving it to us on the defensive end. This guy right here, it seems, if he's not giving you what you need from an offensive standpoint, he's going to make his presence be felt defensively, just like Bennett did, during the regular season. And then he kicked it into gear once the playoffs ran. That's the type of person that a GM loves. That's the type of guy that you can build your team with, not necessarily around, but those type of guys you can build your team on. Guys that, as this season is longer and it's getting a game or two longer, you need guys on your team that if they're not giving it to me offensively, I know one thing: they're going to give it to me defensively. And a lot of times that turns into transitions for other players.
615-737-1025. Your thoughts on the selection of Brady Martin with the number 5 overall pick in the NHL draft on Friday night. Did the Predators play it safe by drafting Brady Martin instead of Porter Martone or James Hagens, who were both on the board at number 5? Those players went right after Martin at number 6 for Martone and number 7 for Hagen. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, what's some draft experts thought of the Predators selection of Brady Martin? We'll get to that next. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game.
There is only one place Brady Martin was the perfect fit. That is Nashville, because they go by the nickname Smashville. And when you watch Brady Martin play, he embodies Smashville at every single turn. He's on it. He's after it. And if you don't know he's on the ice, you're going to quickly find out he's on the ice. Whether he skates by you, scores a goal, creates a chance with a forecheck, or finishes a check. He is so hard to play against because he does not stop at any moment in time. When I watch him play, I see a lowercase Tom Wilson, and we know the impact that Tom Wilson has. Players getting ready to play the Washington Capitals and Tom Wilson don't sleep very well during their afternoon nap. And that's exactly what Brady Martin brings to a team. You think about a player that does everything to help you win. We just watched the Stanley Cup Finals and how hard it is to win. If it was easy, everybody would win. Brady Martin knows it's hard, and he helps you win.
That was Craig Button of TSN analyzing the Predators' selection of Brady Martin with the number 5 overall pick on Friday. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan. Before we get to some analysis of that pick from draft experts, let's go to William on our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunting.com. William, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Thanks, guys. Well, the scouts, they feel that Martone and Haggins had plateaued last year. They had better film, better games last year, and their ceiling was lower than Martin. Martin was considered every year getting better and better, and that's a guy with a high ceiling. There's two teams who are pissed we didn't draft James Haggins, and that's Philadelphia and Boston, because they would have passed on him too. Martone and Haggins were fallers, and Martin was a riser. The scouting process is ongoing. They don't stop off a highlight package. You got to watch the whole games. Like you watch the whole games, like on Flow Hockey. Your average player only has the puck 5% of the game. What is he doing without the puck? A lot of guys just stand there, and then until they cherry pick and they go in, they get a good highlight reel. But you got to watch the whole game. And Lyndon Lakovic and Martone and Haggins, they're peripheral. They don't want to get their nose dirty type players.
Thank you for the call,
Thank
William.
you. I mean, listen, he may just be right. I'm not going to sit here and, say and lie and say that I watched the film, because I haven't seen any one of these players. First time I ever seen them was when they showed them on the draft. Okay. But I'm looking at, what scouts are saying, what talking heads are saying about, these individual players. And you got to understand, Hagen's, it wasn't like he got drafted immediately. I don't think right after the Preds. Yeah, it was two picks later. And then where did Martone go?
The pick after. Yeah. So it went Brady Martin at 5, Porter Martone at 6, James Haggins at 7. So that's something you're going to have to keep an eye on. Exactly. Predators fans, if Martone and Haggins flourish as offensive players in the NHL, and Porter and Brady Martin, I think William made some good points there.
Yes.
I think that it is unquestionable, however, that Martin does not have the offensive ceiling of I almost combined Porter Martone to Partone. Porter Martone and James Haggins. And I think that's why some Predators fans are upset, is because they lust after one of those players. They watch other teams have those high point producing centers and wingers, and Predators fans have been wanting that for years and years and years. And Martone and Haggins provide more of an opportunity, based on what I've read, for that than Martin. So let's just quickly read some recaps, some grades of these picks, of that pick specifically, of Brady Martin, from draft experts. Corey Prodman of The Athletic, who again had Martin going 5th overall to the Predators in his final mock draft. This was his grade. Pick grade, C+. Thoughts on the pick? I've known Martin going in the top 5 was a possibility for weeks, but I've struggled to get around to the idea. He's a super likable person and player with great physicality and a very good talent base. I wouldn't call him a dynamic offensive player, though, and with average size, I just don't love this profile at 5, especially with players like Porter Martone or James Haggins on the board. The way he plays appeals to Barry Trotz. Time will tell if they left too much talent on the table or they picked their Sam Bennett. That was Corey Prodman of The Athletic. Rachel Dory of ESPN. Quote, a Swiss Army knife type of player who will be most effective on the wing because of his strong wall play. Martin projects as a middle six forward capable of scoring 20 goals routinely with upside as a second line forward. He's a wrecking ball that will bring value in all three zones, on and off the puck. So on and so forth. He's a nightmare to contain with his brute strength and forces defenders into precarious positions with good speed and willingness to make quote unquote winning plays. Another pick that was rumored to be on the move, the Predators kept the pick and took Martin. Martin is a raw player with functional strength and projects to be a middle six forward, meaning second or third line. He will shine as the games get tighter and more violent and can swing momentum with a brilliant forecheck or big head. The hard-nosed style of game was very attractive to many teams, especially with Sam Bennett and the Panthers' recent success. Martin needs at least another season or two to develop his offensive game, and while the Predators did leave some skill with James Hagens and Porter Martone on the board, they believe Martin can be an impactful player for years to come. So that appears to be the consensus that another analyst, Chris Peters, who works for Flow Hockey, he called Martin the most feared body checker in this draft. So I think the consensus is that Martin, as William said on the call, as we talked about, as we read right here, he will get his nose dirty. He will make plays without the puck. He will, as Craig Button said in that clip we played before the segment, other teams will be game planning for Brady Martin. They'll always know when he's on the ice. The quintessential keep your head on the swivel when this guy is on the ice. That can be incredibly valuable. Again, the question is, did the Predators play it safe by taking that type of player versus taking a player or players who have more offensive upside?
Well, quickly before we got some text here, wasn't the fear of Hagens before the draft was he was too undersized?
James Hagens, yes, that was a big part of it.
He was too undersized. And if you're trying to be a physical team, I understand that the potential scorer mentality is there, the ability to do things with the puck that some guys can't do. I understand the scoring threat is there, but if he's undersized and you're afraid he's going to get beat up, we've seen this before, undersized guys with the Nashville Predators, and eventually over time they just get beat up, and it neutralizes. We saw it a couple of years ago. Who was it? Undersized player, gosh, and then got in the playoff for the Nashville Predators and just
Victor Arvidsson.
Yeah, Victor Arvidsson. And just got beat up in the playoffs. And all that we saw during the season, it got negated in the playoffs. Why? Because things tend to get a lot more physical once we enter the playoffs. Who's to say? And I'm not saying either or, but I'm just trying to give I'm trying to give more of a reason why the Nashville Predators chose to go with Martin instead of Hagens, because Martone is a bigger player.
Yes. Martone is bigger than both of them.
Exactly. So I think it was more so between Martone and Martin than Martin and Hagens, because Hagens just doesn't fit what the Nashville Predators want to do and hope once they get into the playoffs. They want to be a physical team. And I don't think Hagens gives them that ability to be physical the way they want to.
Let's go to Steve on our phone line, driven by Wilson County, Hyundai.com. Steve, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Yeah, poor Victor is still getting beat up. He got beat up pretty good.
He did, yes.
He played for the Edmonton Oilers, and he's still getting abused. But we bring up the fact that, our players, a lot of our players are in their 30s. But, I work out. To me, if you work out hard and you're still building muscle, you're still staying in good shape. Why can't a player play into their 40s? Because all this time that they're doing that too, they're getting older, they're developing stick skills, they're becoming a better player. So I'll hang up and listen to your thoughts. Thanks
for the call, Steve. Let's talk to the former professional athlete who's sitting to my right about father time.
Listen, we've seen guys defy father time.
And every sport is different, by the way.
Every sport is different. I was one of those guys that were able to play into my late 30s and play at a high level into my late 30s. Now, last year was just a throwaway year. But before that, I ended up retiring at 37, I believe. So I was still producing at the age of 35, going into 36. Some players, it happens. They can play for that long, but the majority of the player in every sport, there is sort of like this line or this age that they get to, and you start to see the decline. The data is there. They've done the data across every sport, and it's like at a certain age, majority of these guys start to go downhill. But what I will say is this: I think teams are starting to, every once in a while, you'll get your 30-year-old plus 30-year-old guy, and he's still playing as if he's at the top of his level. But because hockey is becoming a such a faster sport, those older guys, especially those that were really wasn't built on the speed, they started to get left behind. And that's why you're right. Guys in their 30s, they should be able to still play at a high level. But because the sport, especially football and basketball, is really evident, it's become a young man's sport. At 30, 31, 32, you are deemed, based upon the data, you are deemed a player that's in the decline instead of a guy that is still rising. That's why you look at it and say, well, all these 30 plus year old guys that the Predators have, that's not good. Not because they can't necessarily play, it's because the sport is getting younger and faster.
One thing we noticed in these Stanley Cup playoffs, specifically in the Stanley Cup final, we talked about Brad Marchand a couple weeks ago, right? 37 years old, having the time of his life. Corey Perry, still kicking, nearly 40 years old. Those players, it is true that older players can still be a factor. The issue with the Predators is that the older players they have are the key players.
Mm-hmm.
Steven Stamkos is not a secondary player for the Nashville Predators. Ryan O'Reilly is not a secondary player for the Nashville Predators. So I understand what the caller was saying, but I think it's different when those older players are playing secondary roles versus when you are counting on them to be the leaders of your team.
When older guys have to carry your team each and every night, eventually that's going to be a problem, because that says to me that your younger guys are not developing the way they need to. And in order to have a consistently winning team, yeah, you may have an older guy, a Yossi, somebody like that leads and that is going to be out there and it's going to be a key part of what you do and may be the part. But you need those young guys that are ready to step into that role. It can't be on them every single night for 80-some games.
615-737-1025. We see your calls. We see your texts. We'll get to the next. 615-737-1025, reacting to the Predators drafting Brady Martin with the 5th overall pick in the NHL draft on Friday. We'll continue to take your reaction. Coming up next, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game.
on Martin is part of maybe why you wanted him the speed at which maybe he could be at the NHL level. Is that part of it, or you're not worried about that?
No, not really. But I can tell you, he's one of those players that you're gonna come at training camp and you're gonna go, this kid's not coming here just for training camp and development camp. He's coming here to take someone's spot, and he's very capable of it. I just believe that. Probably, we'll let it play out, but knowing his mentality, just watching him in the short time that we got to see him and everything that the scouting staff has said about him, and like he'll push people out of a job if they're not careful. That's just, I think his mentality is that he comes and brings it every night and practice and in games, and you got to be aware.
That was Barry Trotz after selecting Brady Martin with the 5th overall pick. By the way, as we've discussed, what's that, Derek?
You know what you know who he sounds like?
Who's that?
Barry Trotz. You know who he sounds like? Last year, sounds like Brian Callahan. Last year, he sounds like the owner. Last year, am I right or am I wrong?
Frazier is back there just going,
am I right or am I right?
You shouldn't have said that, D-Mace.
He sounds like Brian Callahan in describing Will Levis. He sounds like the owner in describing her young, great, quarterback, second-year quarterback. Sounds just like them. And I don't know if that's a good thing.
By the way, as we previously discussed, since the year 2000, there have only been 4 players drafted 5th overall who played at least 10 games with the team that drafted them the following season. And it hasn't happened since 2015, when Noah Hannafin played 79 games for the Carolina Hurricanes after being drafted 5th overall in that 2015 draft. Let's go to James on our phone line, driven by Wilson County, Hyundai.com. James, thank you for waiting. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. What I wanted to say was I believe we ought to give this young man a chance and see what he's about, because we have scores. Everybody's mad, say we don't have scores. We got scores, and like Jared so famously put, we ain't got a number 1 center. So maybe this could be the facilitator to help our scores out. And that's all I got to say about it. Thank you.
Thanks for the call, James. I hear what you're saying. First of all, I don't think that Brady Martin is going to make an immediate impact for this team. History suggests that's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. The Predators do have scorers. I mean, Steven Stamkos, one of the greatest goal scorers of his generation, behind only the greatest goal scorer of all time, Alex Ovechkin. But guess what? I don't think Brady Martin's going to be around soon enough to help Steven Stamkos score goals. So the Predators do have scores right now. They didn't score very many goals last year, but by the time Brady Martin probably is going to be an everyday member of this team, Steven Stamkos may not be on the team anymore. So the young scorers, that's the issue. Who are the young scorers going to be? Luke Evangelista? Let's go to Adam. So. Let's go to Adam in Portland on our phone line, driven by Wilson County, Hyundai.com. Adam, thank you for waiting. Please go ahead.
I just think it's super annoying. And nobody knows what this kid's going to be. I don't care about the draft as much. What I care about is that Dante Fabro just signed a 4-year contract after we let him go on a trial run with the Blue Jackets. And then we get some left-handed defenseman that sucks, and we pay him $5 million a year. That's the problem I have. Barry, he's got blinders on, dude. He's like a coach that's stubborn as hell. He's already got his mind made up, but it feels like he's playing checkers. There's no long-term strategy here, dude. This sucks. I don't care about the young guy. I hope he does good. They were all so close. They already talked about it. That's why it's like flipping quarters. But when it comes to the defenseman, we know what we needed, and we didn't get one. And then we didn't get Fabro paid, man. It just sucks, dude. It just is a weak move signing that defenseman.
Thank you for the call, Adam.
And losing Colton Sissons.
I know. Colton Sissons. Thank you for the call, Adam. Colton Sissons again. David, if you have Sarah McLachlan available, you can play it over this.
Who?
Sarah McLachlan.
I'm not David.
Not David. Sorry, Nick. David Jane's not here. I'm sorry. You know what I mean?
Y'all do look alike. No.
You both wear glasses.
I'm just playing. Nick.
I'm sorry, Frazier.
I still got to worry about getting on the rides at Dolly World, man.
It's Dollywood.
Dollywood. Sorry.
Man.
But yes, Colton Sissons, it is, from a sentimental standpoint, it is tough to see Colton Sissons go because of how important he was to this team for more than a decade.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. Not David, Nick.
You're going to produce this show. I'm leaving, man.
If you
Nick,
leave, we're going off the air.
I'm still here. We're good. Nick.
Okay.
We're good.
Sorry, Frazier. It's a habit. It's a habit.
A good habit.
You know I love you, Frazier. Thank you, Frazier, for playing Sarah McLachlan. It does sting from a sentimental standpoint to lose Colton Sissons because he was a valuable part of this team. Good guy. I always enjoyed interacting with Colton Sissons, but he's off to Vegas now. Joel from Woodbury says, stop taking Adam's calls and texts. Signed, everyone. You know what?
Leave Adam alone.
I appreciate Adam in Portland because Adam in Portland is a devoted listener.
Yes.
And we love that. We love all of you who participate and call in and text us 615-737-1025. Michael in Mount Juliet. Tell me what you think about this, Derek. Michael in Mount Juliet. Trotz contradicted his messaging with the Brady Martin pick. He has consistently said he wants to take big swings with players with high upside. He said that when he selected Surin last year and many other times. Martin may be great, but definitely not the type Trotz has said he would like to have.
Whether this is a big swing or not, it doesn't seem like that because it's not like, again, this guy was, ranked, not a top 10 pick.
Again, this was not a reach.
Exactly.
You
It
can
wasn't a
argue
reach.
with the pick, but based on the draft experts, this was not a reach. Brady Martin was going to be drafted in the top 10.
Yeah, he was going to be drafted in the top 10. Now, what would many classify as taking a big swing? I think when you're talking about a big swing, you're talking about free agency, not in the draft.
I think let's use James Hagens as an example. So James Hagens falls to 7th, drafted by the Boston Bruins. So he doesn't really have to move his stuff because he's playing at Boston College. He just has to move down the street. He may not even have to move, depending on where he's living right now. And by the way, he had the pleasure of having his name announced by Adam Sandler as Happy Gilmore with the 7th overall pick. But taking a big swing, James Hagens, he is an undersized player. I saw it tweeted, I believe, by Frank Saravalli of Daily Faceoff, that of all of the players selected in the draft, and that was more than 200 players, I think only 30 were listed at under 6 feet tall. So teams prioritized size in this draft. So Hagens would have been a big swing because he's a smaller player, but he has a lot of offensive upside. And if he hits, it appears that Hagens can be a big-time point producer. So that's the big swing, is that Martin, again, not taking anything away from Brady Martin, because from what I've read, there is a lot to like about Brady Martin. It feels like it was the safe pick versus taking a big swing on James Hagens.
Again, I get that part, but I just look at big swings like free agency. Like you're taking,
that's fair.
You're looking at it as, I'm taking this big swing, so I'm going to get the number one free agent out there, and I'm paying them as much money as I think I need to pay him in order to get him on my team. To me, that's a big swing. If Connor McDavid somehow, some way got the free agency, that would be a big swing. Drafting a Hagens or Martin or Martone, those are not big swings. Those are scouting individuals, looking at individuals and saying, based upon what I'm projecting, they fit better with my team moving forward. Not necessarily today, even though the way they speaking about Martin, he may just play. He may be on the opening day roster this season and may stay there. But he's just another guy in their mind that if he helps us this year, great. But we know that his style, his type, he's going to be a contributor for us. It may be a high contributor for us moving forward. again, taking a big swing for me is like in free agency. This, whether they would have drafted Hagens or Martone, it still wouldn't have been a big swing based upon my definition of a big swing. So whether this works out or not, I think, if it doesn't work out, then obviously he will, Trotzy will be crucified for this pick, considering. But a lot of it depends on too whether Hagens and Martone, how they do. If one of those individuals find themselves on opening day roster and they are contributing right away, your guy he better be doing the same thing, because if not, if we got to wait some years and those guys, we're already seeing them on the ice producing, then yeah, that love that we all have for you, or the fan base have for you, Barry, it may be sort of deteriorating as we speak.
Quickly,
if indeed it doesn't happen in that way.
Quickly, one texter says that call, meaning Adam's call, was so dumb. Fabro stunk. The texter did not use the word stunk. I had to add that in there. Carrier would have been the guy to keep, but I believe they're moving people around to sign Aaron Ekblad in a second line center. Nick Hague is a solid 6'6" defender. Go watch him play us last year, and the fact that we couldn't do anything when he was on the ice. Also, the salary cap is going up. Contracts will look more like this. Now, that would be the point that Willie would make if he's here. So a $5.5 million cap hit for a third pairing defenseman in a rising salary cap environment may be the going rate for a third pairing defenseman. But there was definitely sticker shock when I saw that contract reported. $5.5 million for Nick Hague, even in a rising salary cap environment. I'm not sure Hague.
But you're looking at and I get it, you're looking at the now, but I would be in agreement with Willie as the years goes on. This doesn't seem like a bad contract. And then a lot of it does depend on how he does this season.
615-737-1025. We will continue to take your reaction to the Predators drafting Brady Martin. You can also react to the Predators trading Colton Sissons and Jeremy Lauzon for Nick Hague. A lot on the table. Coming up next, we're going to do a bit of NHL draft potpourri, I guess you could call it. The broadcast of the NHL draft. Some other tidbits that came out about the Predators. A couple of trades that may or may not have happened. Well, they didn't happen, but trades that were on the table reportedly. We'll kind of touch on the news and notes of the NHL draft coming up next, but we'll also continue to take your reaction at 615-737-1025. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game. D. Mace, Finnegan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Derek Mason, Adam Finnegan, Nick Frazier, not David Janes, Nick Frazier. David Janes and Willie Donick are out today. A couple more texts before we get to some NHL draft news and notes. One texter says, Adam keeps calling Nick Hague a third pairing defenseman. I don't know if that's fair. He was a third pairing defenseman in Vegas, but they have great depth at the position, which is true. Hagens is closer to a top 4 guy on most NHL rosters, including Nashville. Left shot issues aside, they're paying him like a top 4 guy. Valid points, texter. The Vegas Golden Knights absolutely have great defensive depth. But in Vegas, he was a third pairing guy. He did spend some time with Alex Pietrangelo in a higher role in the lineup. But because of that depth, I only saw him in a third pairing role most of the time. So at this point, I think of him as a third pairing guy. We'll see if the Predators give him more opportunity. We'll see if he makes the most of it. But from what I know of Nick Hague, he has been a third pairing defenseman. But your points are well taken.
So if with Vegas, yes, he was a third pair. Maybe he comes here. When he comes here, where do you see him potentially ultimately fitting?
Well, if
it's not in a third pairing, can you see him moving up as far as what?
Well, if the Predators want to put Roman Josi on his offhand and play him on the right side, I suppose you could see Nick Hague playing with Roman Josi in a top pairing role. But again, my viewings of Nick Hague, and again, I'm not watching Nick Hague every night, but my viewings of Nick Hague are he's been playing a third pairing role. So I need to see him play up the lineup more than I have before I can say, yeah, he's really more of a top 4 guy playing on a deep defense. Because look, we've seen that in Nashville over the years. There was a time where Seth Jones was a third pairing defenseman for the Nashville Predators because they had Shea Weber and Roman Josi, but T.S. Ekholm and Ryan Ellis. There was nowhere else for Seth Jones to play other than the third pair. So I get that. I concede that point. But I need to see it before I can say, well, he was only a third pairing defenseman in name only.
Well, it's sort of like, again, I try to find tentacles here. It's sort of like the third receiver. Like if you've seen him say in Nashville, you've seen him for the last 3 years, he's just been a 3. It's hard for possibly someone else, if he gets traded or if he goes to another team, being nothing more than at best a 2,
like Nick Westbrook-Akine.
Yes, exactly. So yes, he thrived in that role as a 3 here, but if he goes to another team, are they looking at him just a 3, or does he have room to elevate himself to a 2? Same way here. Yes, he's been a 3, but does he have the skill set to elevate himself to a 2 or a top line defenseman?
Yes. So I want to take this segment. We'll continue to take your reaction because we've had a lot of it all show long. We appreciate that. At 615-737-1025. I do want to take a moment to just talk about some news and notes. First, let's talk about the broadcast of the NHL draft.
Yeah.
It may still be going on as far as I know. That first round took hours and hours. It was agonizing. And I do want to make one point that NHL general managers overwhelmingly voted for this. The vote was 26-6 to decentralize the draft this year. So the NHL had to do what they could. They had to make chicken salad out of chicken, you know what. And it did not work. The worst, the draft house was the worst thing I've ever seen. Not really. That's an exaggeration. But abolish the draft house. I never need to see the draft house again, which was that weird room where, okay, timeout. One texter says, shouldn't y'all, because someone's watching the stream.
Yes.
Shouldn't y'all be having sports programs on your TV behind Adam rather than General Hospital? Take that up with Big Joe Dubin.
Exactly.
Don't take that up with me. We have Sports Center on this TV over here.
Yes.
Take it up with Big Joe Dubin. He sits in Derek Mason's chair on the previous program. He's watching The Price is Right and watching his soap opera. So
don't knock it. Hey, don't knock it.
I know. I'm just saying. I'm.
There we go.
Okay. All right. There you go, Texter. Sports Center is on.
There we go.
So
What's going to happen to Angela? Well, come on now. We got to know what happens to Angela at 2:30.
I don't know.
I hope you recorded it.
The only soap opera I ever watched was Nashville. And I don't know if you can even
Oh, I
call
loved
that
Nashville.
a
Loved
soap
it,
opera.
yes.
I mean, it was at night, so I guess it could be like a nighttime soap opera.
Yeah.
Nevertheless.
But I loved it. Go ahead.
Yes. So the draft house. So the players would get selected. And during the regular NHL draft, when all of the teams and GMs are there, the draft pick would walk up to the stage. He would shake hands with Gary Bettman. He would shake hands with all of the people in the front office.
Mhm.
They would take a picture. But because that wasn't available, because all of the GMs were in their home cities, they had this weird room where they did like a Zoom call with these prospects. And man, oh man, it was awkward. I think it was the pick by Utah, Caleb Denoyer, who went right before Brady Martin. He walks into that room, and the Utah GM says, Caleb, it's great to have you. Welcome to the Mammoth. And then Denoyer has this blank stare on his face for a couple of seconds. And he turns to the woman standing next to him and goes, "What did they say?" Like, I don't know if he could hear them.
Uh-huh.
Like, it was just very awkward. The whole thing was very awkward. It reminded me of all of the terrible parts about the Zoom era, where you started talking and someone would say, "Please unmute yourself." That's basically what it was like. So the NHL, again, they made the best of a bad situation. The GMs wanted to do this. This was not the NHL's idea. This was the GM's idea, and by extension, the owner's idea, because they wanted to save money. But man, oh man, did it drag on. It was a hard watch. I watched through the first 5 picks to see Brady Martin, to see who the Predators picked. And then I kind of kept it on in the background until the Predators came back on the clock. But I did not sit through the whole thing.
Yeah, and that's the same thing I did. I sat there and watched the first 5 picks. And then after that, I kept it on, but was doing other things just because I wanted to see who the Predators, one, if they were going to trade their picks, or ultimately see if they were going to stick and pick. Here's the thing. NHL and Nashville Predators. The NHL didn't do themselves any help. And by way, they didn't do the Nashville Predators any help. Now, good thing. Here's the silver lining through it. The silver lining is the people in Nashville love their team. They love the Nashville Predators. So they are going to support the Nashville Predators. People that probably never went to a hockey game, they are going to go to a hockey game because the team does a tremendous job at pulling in fans from all across the state of Tennessee. But the NHL didn't do nan one of their teams any justice. First and foremost, if you are trying to get new viewers, what you did, you lost them in the first 5 minutes of the draft. You lost them. They were gone. Because there was no rhyme or reason to anything that y'all did Friday. I'm not talking about, I didn't even watch it after that. There was nothing that y'all did on the opening night where y'all are trying to get all the eyes on y'all product. Y'all did nothing to keep them there past the first couple of picks or the first 10 minutes of the actual draft when it started, when the guy said, and up to and on the clock. From that point on, you did nothing to keep the wannabe casual hockey fan in their seats to watch and be interested in your sport. For one, you set up all these players in sort of this galley that they got to get up and they got to shake 30 hands before they even get to the stage. It was ridiculous. It was like the Grammys or the Oscars. It was just like, he go past, and then another guy stands up, then another guy, then another girl, then another guy, then another guy. It was like, it took them 5 minutes to get to the front, the actual stage. It took them 5 minutes to get to the actual stage. And I hope they had some disinfected once they got to the stage. Because I don't want all them germs on my hands. I want to be able to wash my hands. That was the first mistake. The second mistake was, like you said, Adam, they had to go in this back room. Once they took off their sport coat, put on their jersey, put on their hat, they had to do all, after all that, then they had to walk around the corner and then go in this spot, stand there for a quick second, and then potentially, answer questions that are being asked of them from the individuals that are doing the interviews and then the GMs that are on the other side of the video. It all just seemed discombobulated. That's what it did. You did your sport, and I know I'm not going to blame this on Gary Bettman, because even him at times it was just like an utter mess, like he fumbling over words and all this other stuff. It was just everything seemed as if no one was on the same page. It's like we should have had a trial run through this first before we did all this, because it was like all of a sudden now we are doing something and it doesn't seem like everyone is connected. So the hockey world didn't do themselves any justice by getting and retaining the new fan. As a matter of fact, you pushed them away from your sport.
It was a tough watch. And again, the NHL, in my opinion, did the best out of a bad situation. The GMs wanted this. I think this is a one-year thing. I think they're going to go back to the way it normally is next summer, where all of the teams are in the same room at the same time. It just gave me the COVID ick, being stuck at home, watching everything through a computer screen. Not great. But another thing I wanted to touch on quickly was some reported trades that ultimately did not happen. Elliot Freeman on the draft broadcast on Saturday. So remember, we talked about this on Friday. The New York Islanders traded their defenseman Noah Dobson to the Montreal Canadiens, and the Islanders picked up number 16 and number 17 overall. According to Elliot Freeman, the Islanders offered those two picks, number 16 and 17, to the Predators at 5, the Flyers at 6, and the Bruins at 7. Of course, all three teams rejected that offer. So according to Elliot Freeman, the Islanders took the two picks that they acquired for Noah Dobson, number 16 and 17, took them to the Predators, Flyers, and Bruins, and all of those teams said no. Now, I don't know if other picks were involved or if it was simply, we'll give you 16 and 17 and we'll get 5. And if that was the deal, I'm glad Barry Trotz said no to that, because that would have not been equitable, I don't think. But then Barry Trotz that same day, on Saturday, did an interview with EJ Radick of NHL Network. Here is what Trotz told EJ Radick on the draft broadcast.
Hey, Barry, we hear about all the different rumors, draft picks, who's trading who's trying to move up, who's moving back. I mean, you had a number of picks in the first round this year. Were there a lot of phone calls? Were there a lot of discussions?
There was a tremendous amount of discussions. I was on the phone after he made the 5th pick, and I had, we've done some preliminary work on the front end, but I was on the phone probably from about pick 7 through 18, I think. Mm-hmm. And I actually had a deal, and our player fell through in the, fairly early. The player that we were trying to get another player within the top 12, 13 picks, and we had a deal in place, but one team grabbed the player, and we had to move on from there. But there's still some other guys that were on our board, and I worked my way up, I think to 18 or 19, and then we already had a pick at 23. So
that was Barry Trotz on NHL Network, and a lot of people have speculated that the player in question was Roger McQueen, who went 10th overall to the Anaheim Ducks. By the way, Roger McQueen had the greatest day ever. So he gets drafted by the Anaheim Ducks. The draft is in Los Angeles. He hops in a helicopter, which takes him to Orange County, where he goes to Disneyland and celebrates being drafted by the Anaheim Ducks at Disneyland, which is, of course, in Anaheim. Then Roger McQueen decided to wear number 95 like his hero, Lightning McQueen. Ka-chow. So Roger McQueen wearing number 95 for the Anaheim Ducks. I love that. My son's new favorite player. We were playing with his Cars Lego set this morning before school. So a lot of hockey fans have speculated that Roger McQueen was the player that Trotz was talking about there. We'll never know, but that's an assumption.
Yeah. And you figured that there was, some deals trying to be made by the Nashville Predators, but just couldn't get anything facilitated. And then they end up picking, taking, which I was surprised. I thought they would package at least one of them. You know, their first round picks to try to move up and get another guy. But I guess once you get past that threshold of 13, 14, if your guy's not there, then what are you moving up for? But I wonder if, how far down the board were the guys that they end up drafting? How far down the board on their draft board were those guys, that you ultimately draft? Because these are guys that, that fits what you want to do. And hopefully you can get them on the roster sooner rather than later.
615-737-1025. A lot to discuss for the Predators this past weekend between the acquisition of Nick Hague, the drafting of Brady Martin. We have a ton of reaction on our text line. We'll continue to take it. 615-737-1025. By the way, Josh from Nevada. Now, this is the same Josh, Derek Mason, who accidentally texted us on Friday saying to his wife, kids at your mom's place, we're going to Texas Roadhouse. Josh said, I'd rather watch the hot dog eating contest than the NHL draft.
Oh, wow.
You watch your mouth, Josh. Because you know what I'll be doing on Friday on Independence Day? You know it. I'll be watching the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. So don't you badmouth Joey Chestnut on this program. This is a Joey Chestnut fan program.
Joey Jaws Chestnut.
Yes,
Let's
Jaws.
not forget.
615-737-1025. We are going to quickly switch gears to the NFL because there was a major trade in the NFL today. I want to get Derek's thoughts on that. Coming up next, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game.
I mean, to me, it says, yes, Pittsburgh is going all in, spending whatever it takes. They go and get Aaron Rodgers. They go and get Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith. It has been a very unconventional Steelers-like offseason with all the players that they've added, including DK Metcalf.
That was Adam Schefter on a major trade between the Miami Dolphins and Pittsburgh Steelers today. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you also. Before we get started, I do want to give a quick shout out to our friends at Tzatziki's, which provided lunch for our station today. They have 13 locations throughout Middle Tennessee and can provide catering for all of your events through Tzatziki's.com. So shout out to Tzatziki's for providing lunch for all of us here at Cromwell Media. But here is the trade between the Dolphins and the Steelers. The Dolphins have agreed to trade 3-time All-Pro cornerback Jalen Ramsey and former Tennessee Titans tight end Jonnu Smith to the Pittsburgh Steelers for 3-time All-Pro safety Minkah Fitzpatrick and a pick swap. As part of the trade, according to ESPN, which is pending physicals, the Dolphins are sending a 2027 7th-round pick to the Steelers and will receive a 2027 5th-round pick back from Pittsburgh. Ramsey will get a $1.5 million raise this season, bringing his 2025 compensation up to $26.6 million. The Steelers are taking on the bulk of Ramsey's contract for this season, with the Dolphins paying $3 million. Smith will receive a 1-year contract extension worth $12 million. So a lot of moving parts there, Derek. Your thoughts on this major move between Miami and Pittsburgh?
I don't understand from a defensive standpoint how this makes Pittsburgh better. Because you're basically swapping, 2 veteran players that didn't have great seasons last year. In Jalen Ramsey's case, the past 2 seasons for him have been mid, considering who he has been as a player. He's been hella good as a player. You can argue for him to be, eventually a Hall of Fame player. But that's for later discussion. But the last 2 seasons in Miami were mid at best. And then you look at Minkah Fitzpatrick, last year he's coming off a year where he only played 10 games. So he was dealing with an injury the year prior. Last year, I can't recall what his injury was the prior year, but he didn't seem like the same player. His game dipped some. And was it a dip because of the previous year's injury, or was it a decline because he's getting older as a player? So to me, that's a wash because, is he a starting corner in this league, Jalen Ramsey still, or is he a nickel guy? Can he be converted into a safety eventually? These are some of the questions that some of the things that Pittsburgh probably went in and decided, because he's not your top flight corner anymore. I think Pittsburgh was 3rd or 4th in interceptions last year. I think they had like 17, somewhere around there. I forgot who led the league at 24, but it might have been Minnesota, somewhere around there. But I don't see from a defensive standpoint what this does for Pittsburgh. People say, you're listening to Schefter. They're doing. If you think of it's just names. I'm talking about production. As far as production from a defensive side, they just swapped out guys. That's all they did was swap out a safety for a corner, and both of them are in the decline of their careers. Now, the key in all of this is Jonnu Smith. That's the key, because who is the offensive coordinator with the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Arthur Smith.
And what does Arthur Smith love to do?
Throw to the tight end.
Absolutely. They already got a stud in Fairmouth. Is that how you pronounce it? Freiermuth. They got a big fella in Freiermuth that can go and get it. He's just a big target, good player. Now you add a more versatile Jonnu Smith, a guy that can stretch the field. You're building exactly what he built here with Derrick Henry in that offense. That's the type of, and he got a quarterback that can really exacerbate the play action and hit DK Metcalf up the field. So from a trade standpoint, it's not about Jalen Ramsey. It's about Jonnu Smith, because I don't think, and I'm not sitting here saying Jalen Ramsey is a trash player or anything else. No, I'm not saying it. What I'm saying is this. They traded him for another guy that seems to be aging. So to me, it's a wash. You get players and one player that was probably the best corner in the league at one point, and Mika was a top 3 or 4 safety at one point, but those guys are nowhere near that now.
According to ESPN, Fitzpatrick, 28, was productive after being acquired by the Steelers in 2019, nabbing 5 interceptions in 14 games with his new team. He had multiple interceptions in each of the next 3 seasons, including a career-high 6 in 2022. But he hit a slump in 2023 and didn't record a single pick as he battled injuries throughout that season. He finally ended the drought with a pick in the Week 16 loss to the Ravens last season, snapping a 25-game streak without an interception. He has 20 interceptions in his career.
So are you getting? It's almost like we're just swapping name for name, because again, okay, I would tend to say if we're asking, well, who got the better of this? On one hand, I would say it was Pittsburgh because of Jonnu Smith, but if the Mika Fitzpatrick was just last year was just an aberration of him playing so bad and he gets back to form, then okay, that was a win for Miami as far as getting the safety. They need one. I don't see Jalen Ramsey, being or showing glimpses throughout consistently enough for Pittsburgh to say, oh, this is going to be a win for Pittsburgh. No, it's not a win. What you're doing, and I've seen it over and over and over again, you're just bringing a big name to a franchise. That's all you're doing.
And what's interesting about that point, Derek, is that it feels, we talked about going against type with the Predators. This feels like going against type for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Here are the players the Steelers have brought in this offseason. Aaron Rodgers, hello. Jalen Ramsey, Darius Slay Jr., Jonnu Smith, and DK Metcalf. They brought in a lot of big personalities.
Big personalities and guys that, for one reason or another, have found themselves in disagreements, during games or something's coming up with each one of them. So again, I don't see this from a Jalen, a Mika Fitzpatrick. If you're talking about just that part of the trade, it's not a win for either team. I think it's just going to be a wash. But the wild card is Jonnu Smith, considering what and how Arthur Smith likes to run his offense, and not having Pickens now and only having really DK Metcalf that has been a proven guy. He's been an All-Pro. He's been a Pro Bowler. He's a number one receiver. So, I mean, outside of that, I'm not sure. Again, I'm not sure that this trade, if Jonnu Smith doesn't really hit, if this trade made any sense to me.
The Steelers are also in the news because, also according to ESPN, in recent weeks, multiple teams have been discussing whether they can trade for Steelers standout pass rusher TJ Watt, who skipped the team's most recent minicamp, according to Adam Schefter. The Steelers haven't shown any willingness to deal Watt so far, but he's unhappy with his contractual situations, and sources believe outside team interest is likely to increase given Monday's trade that sent Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith from the Dolphins to Pittsburgh for Minka Fitzpatrick. The Steelers have been adamant that they want Watt to finish his career in Pittsburgh. Watt last signed a 4-year, $112 million deal in 2021 that's averaged $28 million per year. Myles Garrett reset the pass rusher market 3 months ago, however, with a record deal that averages $40 million annually and includes $123.5 million in guaranteed money, making him the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history.
Well, that's what TJ Watt wants. It's not necessarily being the highest paid, because I don't think he's going to reach that. I don't think he's going to overtake Myles Garrett.
Although he does have more sacks, career sacks than Myles Garrett.
But I think he wants closer to that guarantee money. What was it, 123?
Let's see. Garrett received $123.5 million in guaranteed money.
That's going to be the negotiation right there. Not necessarily the 40 per year. It's going to be, how much of this money am I getting guaranteed? Does he want the same guarantee that Myles Garrett's got, 123, maybe even more, or is he working somewhere in that ballpark? Now, if Pittsburgh, listen, they can. I know they probably want to get a contract done, but this is probably going to be one of the most difficult contracts they've had to, do within the last, probably outside of his first re-up he did for 4 years, 120 something million. Because now he's a little bit older. He has dealt with injury. Where does he slot at in regards to his production moving forward? He's not a $40 million guy moving forward. And I think they understand that. But how much money is he going to get close to? How close is he going to get to Myles Garrett in regards to guarantee money?
Would it be wrong to equate what the Steelers are doing right now to what the Predators have been doing over the past year? The Steelers are making a lot of win now type moves by signing Aaron Rodgers, bringing in DK Metcalf, bringing in Jalen Ramsey, although Ramsey, as you noted, is a diminished version of himself. But it does feel like they're going against type here. This is not what the Steelers usually do, right? So I'm wondering if they think, hey, this may be our best chance for a while.
Well, they, what they understand is that Cincinnati,
Cleveland and Baltimore.
Baltimore, not even Cleveland, really, but Cincinnati and Cleveland, two teams that are competing with. They have their quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really have our quarterback. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is there, but he's not long.
It's 1 year.
Yeah, so we gotta try to now build other areas. We got to go out and make splashes in other areas, because if we don't, then we're going to stay behind Baltimore. We're going to stay behind Cincinnati. We're going to be continuing to fight with Cleveland, not to be in that last, even though it seemed like consistently you're going to get 3 teams out of the AFC. What is that? The AFC North.
The AFC North.
In the playoffs.
I mean, the Browns have like 17 quarterbacks on their roster.
Exactly.
So one of them might work out. It might be Shedeur Sanders. It might be Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah, but they understand until they get their full-time, their future quarterback,
right? Which they don't have yet.
Yeah, only way they can stay in contention is to make moves like this. Even though ultimately, I'm not sure from a defensive standpoint, unless they sign TJ Watt back, I'm not sure the moves that they made are going to be. Even Darius Slay, how much is this going to help them?
615-737-1025. Your thoughts on the blockbuster in the NFL? That word is overused when describing trades. I think this would qualify. A blockbuster trade between the Miami Dolphins and Pittsburgh Steelers involving Jalen Ramsey, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and former Tennessee Titans tight end Jonnu Smith. 615-737-1025. All right. Jared Stillman is coming up next as we transition from DVD to Stillman & Company. I know Jared probably has a lot of thoughts about what the Predators have been doing over the past few days. He doesn't like to give away everything, but we'll let him preview his thoughts with us. Coming up next, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Hey, if you're looking to do a little home improvement, you're going to upgrade a bathroom, a kitchen, a man cave, a patio, whatever it might be in your home, and you've been visualizing and you're saying, how do I fund it? Well, our friends at Loan Pronto are ready to do it by using your home's equity to drive that engine. It's called the Rapid Equity Loan Program, and here's the thing. You can get approved in under 24 hours, and you can get this cash with a great system efficiently, not a whole lot of headaches to try to get this done, and you could be on your way to that new patio that you've been looking for that maybe has the outside TV and the grill and all of that stuff. Instant approvals, low rates, no hard credit pull. These are the things that help Loan Pronto get you that money fast so you can get to the end game. Call Loan Pronto and find out more about the Rapid Equity Loan Program. 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender. NMLS 166-1781 on approved credit. NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
D. Mace, Vingen, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Derek Mason, Adam Vingen here with you. No, it's not Fireball Hot Take Friday. It is Monday, but we are joined as we are at the end of every program by the one and only Jared Stillman. Now, Jared, I know that you don't like to give away everything because we want people to stick around for 2 o'clock, but I will let you choose which segment you want to preview. Your thoughts on the drafting of Brady Martin or your thoughts on the Nick Hague trade that was made official this morning. I'll let you choose the way you want to go with this. Is Jared there?
With 10 being...
There we go.
On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being Scotty Bowman, what would you put your hockey knowledge at?
Okay, so I didn't hear you at the beginning, so please repeat that.
So for you, Adam.
Yes.
No disrespect, Derek.
Oh, no disrespect.
For you, Adam, on a scale of 1 to 10.
Yes.
With 10 being Scotty Bowman.
Yes.
What would you say your level of hockey knowledge is?
I would confidently put it in between 7 and 8. I am not an expert by any means. I'm not going to be able to break down X's and O's for you, but I've covered the game long enough. I still write about it. I still work in it. I would say somewhere between a 7 and an 8 confidently.
Okay. So let's say you're a 7. Just put it on the shorter end just for fun. If you own the Predators, let's say you're Bill Haslam and you just took over this team, and with your knowledge of hockey, you saw the Brady Martin pick on Friday night, and then you got a text or a call or whatever at 11 o'clock at night last night saying, hey, boss, we were going to make this trade for this defenseman. How would you have reacted?
Well, I do think that the Brady Martin pick was a safe pick for the Predators. It did. If they went for their type, they did not go against type. They have a type that they like, and that's who they picked in Brady Martin. So, but the thing is, I haven't watched Brady Martin, so it's harder for me to have, as the owner of the team, an opinion on that. You better hope that Trotz is right by picking Brady Martin at 5, as opposed to players like Porter Martone or James Higgins, who have higher offensive ceilings. The Nick Hague one, that's a head scratcher, because I think I would like your opinion on this, Jared. Derek made a good point earlier in the show. Like Nick Hague, let's equate Nick Hague to Nick Westbrook-Akine. Nick Westbrook-Akine was a good, if not slightly better than good, number 3 receiver for the Tennessee Titans. He had incredible production that he's not going to be able to sustain next season. But you saw what Nick Westbrook-Akine did, and someone, I guess it was the Dolphins, right? The Dolphins picked him up. The Dolphins may say, hey, we saw what he did in a 3rd wide receiver role for the Tennessee Titans. Imagine if we put him in a 2nd wide receiver role for us. Those touchdowns are going to go through the roof. But the Dolphins are going to learn the hard way that that's probably not going to happen. And that's what I think this Nick Hague trade is. Nick Hague was a 3rd pairing defenseman on a deep defense behind Alex Pietrangelo and Shea Theodore and Noah Hannafin. So is Nick Hague capable of playing top 4 minutes? Sure. But we've never seen it because he played behind a deep defense. So the Predators may be taking a risk. And hey, he was only a 3rd pairing defenseman in name only by playing for the Golden Knights. But on our team, he'll have a more, a bigger role. We can get more out of him. I think that's quite the risk.
Floyd used to tell me, just because you pay a 4th wide receiver, number 2 wide receiver money, does not mean that you have a 2nd wide receiver on your team. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, each individual move the Predators have made here for a little bit, I feel like I can understand. Each individual move itself on the surface. But when put into the context of the larger moves and the bigger picture, it becomes a lot harder to understand. So I use the idea of running it back with roughly the same core of Forsberg and Yossi, Saros, Marcus O'Shea, Stamkos, etc. And then again, really getting rid of everything except for those guys, because that's what it kind of feels like. Evangelista, I guess, is the only guy who I feel like has now been sticking around through thick and thin. But I understand running it back with that core and thinking you're going to get a different result. But if you're going to do that, don't you have to change coach?
Theoretically, yes.
Okay, so, and the other side of this is I understand like getting behind Andrew Burnett and saying, hey, this guy's been a Jack Adams finalist in 2 of the 3 years he's been a head coach. We shockingly made the playoffs 2 years ago. Nobody expected that. I know Andrew Burnett's a good coach, but if you're going to keep Andrew Burnett, don't you have to kind of move out Marchessault, who clearly doesn't really have an affinity for the coach?
I am curious. I hear what you're saying. I mean, they're all valid questions.
Yeah. But again, it's all the moves though that I struggle with a little bit when it's, we're going to bring in Eric Holla to go next to Fedor Svechkov so that way Eric Holla can take some defensive zone draws over Fedor Svechkov. Then we're going to play. We hope that Fedor Svechkov can be our second line center. Well, if Fedor Svechkov's your second line center, Eric Holla ain't playing next to him. So I don't understand that one either. And then I look at the amount of left shot defensemen that are on this team. I mean, they have one right shot defenseman. It's Michael Barron, and he stinks. I guess Blankenberg, if you count him, he stinks too. So what are they going to do? Just play all left shot defensemen and just tell everybody, hey, play the right side?
You're going to have Justin Barron on your top pair with Roman Josi at this rate. We'll see what happens in free agency.
That is unacceptable. He sucks. Him being on the team is questionable to me. So again, I can argue for each individual move, and on its face why this is a good move or why this is not a good move. What I'm having a hard time doing is piecing the puzzle together. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense as far as I'm concerned.
And one point you made on social media after the Predators drafted Brady Martin, and I bet you're going to get more into this in depth on your program, is Barry Trotz, the GM, acting like Barry Trotz, the coach. I would love for you, if you're not going to spoil too much, expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I said this on Friday. I actually said this on Thursday. When I asked Trotz on Tuesday what he was looking for in the pick, I asked him about all those guys and we laughed. I said, well, are you looking for high-end talent in a small frame? Are you looking for a really big guy who might have an injury risk? Basically asking directly. And Trotz said the most important thing to him was the level of compete. And when I heard that and then saw Scott Wheeler write in The Athletic that the most competitive player in the draft was Brady Martin, and then heard Scott Wheeler on your program the next day say that, oh yeah, the competitiveness of Brady Martin's through the roof. I said, if this is a Trotz pick, and the 5th overall pick is not always just the general manager's call. That's the one where everybody kind of has a little hand in the cookie jar. So I said, if this is a Trotz pick, it's going to be Brady Martin. Because when I hear that, competitiveness, Trotz already told us what he was looking for on Tuesday. He wanted the most competitive player. That was the most competitive player. That doesn't mean that's what I would have done. But Trotz absolutely telegraphed, his desire for the competitive player. And if you know anything about Barry Trotz, that's the kind of guy he loves. So that it does not come as much of a surprise to me. But I did think this was going to be more than Trotz. I thought this was going to involve the owner, who's the former Republican governor. And again, those guys, USA with James Hague standing right there on the board, or that it would involve David Kelty and it would involve, that group that has been traditionally very strong when it comes to Team USA ties, which again would point to Hagen's. So I was surprised when Hagen's was there that Martin was the pick, but I'm not shocked that this is who Barry Trotz loves.
I think this is an interesting text from Kevin on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. He says, seems like this is one of those times when a dad has been telling his son all those years how hard life can be in the business he does. Then dad retires, leaves his son to do the job that he's been thinking all these years. Well, wait till my turn. I can do it better than dad. All of a sudden, son realizes, yeah, this GM stuff is much different than being a coach. Much different. Love Barry. God, I love that man, but he is struggling. That was Kevin on our text line.
Yeah, we live in the United States. If I can do your job better than you can, we have like doctors telling us people like, nah, doctors, they don't know. So that's not new. But I do think what surprises me about Trotz is that I did feel like a lot of the moves when he took the job actually made a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking for a certain type of identity and you want guys to compete, getting Johansson and Duchesne out of here makes sense to me, even though Matt Duchesne has had a productive career in Dallas. That made sense to me. Matt Duchesne needs to be hitting 6th in the lineup. He does not need to be hitting 3rd or 4th. And here he was paid $8 million. So that I understand. At the trade deadline, when the Predators were kind of in, kind of out, he didn't deal any high picks. He added Zucker and Beauvillier. That made sense. Even last year when he went and spent money on the old Pop-Pops, that made sense. But now some of these moves are starting to not make a lot of sense. again, he waives Dante Fabro, which I was fine with because Fabro hadn't improved at all when he was with the Predators from the day he got drafted at Boston University. But if you're going to waive Fabro, then you can't get rid of Alexander Carrier a month later because now who's playing on the right side? And that's the problem they're in now. So I got to tell you, I don't know if it's so much that Trotz doesn't know what he's doing as much as what happened to the Barry Trotz that made moves that made sense a couple years ago.
What did you think of the NHL draft broadcast on Friday?
Holy crap. What a freaking clown show. You know, Bobby
It
Knight.
was bad.
Bobby Knight one time got up there and said, and I don't even know what he was referring to, but he was mad. And Bobby Knight goes, I would say this was a Mickey Mouse operation, but that would be an insult to Mickey Mouse. I have to say, I thought that somebody, and I know, you know, the way that this is going to get portrayed is that it's really the team's fault and not the league's fault because the teams are the ones that voted for this. I think somebody should be fired for what happened on Friday night. I thought that was such a bad reflection of the league. When I heard you guys say, hey, the Predators are going to be represented by Shea Weber and Jordan Davis and George Kittle for their 3 picks, what I thought that meant was Gary Bettman was going to walk to the stage with Shea Weber.
Yes.
And Shea Weber was going to read off the card with the 5th pick, the Nashville Predators select. Instead, you got these guys. Shea Weber's went at the golf course on Zoom. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. Then they take him into the draft house, which is uncomfortable anyways. It's like, what is this? Like an episode of Love is Blind? Like, all right, now we reveal
Hockey
who
is
blind.
blind.
You guys talk to each other now in front of the cameras. And not only that, it was like, so how excited were you to add Derek to your team? Oh, well, I think we're having some technical difficulties for the 5th time tonight. I'm like, oh God. What
So
a
Brady
freaking
Martin,
clown
Brady
show.
Martin, he got off scot-free
he
because
did.
he wasn't
Good
there.
Boy, that reminded me, not that I think that he's like Peter Skoronsky in any way, but that reminded me of Skoronsky not being at the draft a couple years ago. Titan fans were so excited. They were, yeah, you know, he's with his family. He's
On the farm.
He's on.
Hey, that's
You know
a
what's
good
crazy?
thing.
I am going to say this. I've talked about Poo Poo Johnson before. You know, the Titans could sign Poo Poo Johnson, and
Yes.
Titans Twitter would tell me.
My
that I'm
son, by
crazy
the
for
way,
not
is a
liking it.
fan of Poo Poo Johnson because whenever he hears you say, he goes, Poo Poo Johnson. So
I have never seen the Titans fans react as negatively as I saw the Predators fans act on Friday night. Holy crap. Was that a negative reaction by Predators fans? I've never seen that out of Titans fans. Never. Even the J.C. Latham pick. 5 minutes after it was made, Titans fans were like, well, you know, Bill Callahan liked him. I have not seen it with Predators fans. Very odd difference between the two.
yes, well, that'll do it for us today. Jared will take it from here. We will continue your reaction to the NHL draft, the acquisition of Nick Hague, NHL free agency opens tomorrow. Jared will have it from here. Stillman and Company coming up next.
Be loved, love on your people. Have a blessed, safe, and wonderful Monday. Kiss the people you love, hug them tight, and enjoy the rest of your day. Peace.